In every interaction, there is a moment where power shifts, where influence can be wielded and where vulnerabilities surface. Robert Greene's Law 33, Discover Each Man's Thumbscrew, is a chilling reminder of the subtle dynamics of power at play in human relationships. This law highlights a principle as old as time: power often lies in the knowledge of others' weaknesses. Yet, this law is not just about exploiting the vulnerabilities of others, it's about understanding them, using that understanding to guide your actions, and, most importantly, ensuring that you remain in control. Imagine for a moment the complexity of the human psyche. Behind the surface of every person lies a constellation of desires, fears, and insecurities that influence their decisions and actions. These vulnerabilities, whether conscious or hidden deep within, create the potential for manipulation. The thumbscrew, in this context, is a metaphor for those fragile points in a person's character or life that, when pressed, can cause them to react in predictable ways. It's not about controlling the person outright, it's about knowing where to apply just the right amount of pressure to make them behave as you want. The phrase itself, thumbscrew, conjures images of medieval torture devices, where a simple twist could break the body or force an action. This, of course, is not to suggest literal torture, but a deeper psychological insight. To master someone or something, you must first learn what drives them, what they fear, and what they desire. Once you know their thumbscrew, you can use this knowledge to steer them without their even realizing it. But why does Greene choose to frame this law in such a provocative and potentially sinister light? Power, in its essence, is not about brute strength or overwhelming dominance, it's about subtlety and influence. People may boast about their strength or their integrity, but in reality, we all have our soft spots. We all have those things that make us react instinctively, whether it's our need for approval, our fear of rejection, or our craving for love and attention. These emotional weaknesses can be harnessed in ways that make us more malleable to the will of others. The search for vulnerability. The first step in applying this law is identifying the thumbscrews, not just in others, but also in yourself. To influence others, you must begin by observing them carefully. Watch their actions, listen closely to their words, and pay attention to how they react to different situations. People may not be entirely aware of their own weaknesses, but they reveal them through their behavior, through the stories they tell, and through the small, seemingly insignificant actions they take. For example, a person may claim to be self-sufficient, yet they may become extremely defensive if anyone questions their abilities. They may assert their independence in front of others, but a careful observer will notice subtle signs of insecurity. This person's thumbscrew may be their need for validation and praise. By simply providing that validation in a way that feels genuine, you can gain their trust and influence their actions. On a more subtle level, there are emotional triggers in everyone's life. Some people are motivated by love or affection, while others are driven by fear or anxiety. Recognizing these emotional triggers, these thumbscrews, gives you the power to guide a person's behavior without them being aware of it. For example, if someone has a deep-seated fear of failure, you might subtly create situations where they feel they can't afford to fail, positioning yourself as a necessary ally or savior. Alternatively, if someone is deeply competitive, using their desire for success and recognition could be your key to influence. However, it's important to note that Greene does not advise using this knowledge for cruelty or manipulation in a malicious sense. The purpose of discovering another person's vulnerabilities is not to harm them but to gain a strategic advantage. In a professional environment, for instance, this law can be used to navigate office politics, manage conflicts, and influence decisions in your favor without ever resorting to open confrontation or manipulation. The fine art of observation. To truly apply Law 33, it's not enough to simply observe, one must also listen carefully. Listening is one of the most powerful tools in discovering the thumbscrew of others. People reveal much about themselves in their speech, the stories they tell, the issues they obsess over, and the emotions that they show when certain topics arise. These verbal cues often give away vulnerabilities that are not immediately obvious through actions alone. For instance, consider a person who constantly brings up their past relationships. What might seem like casual conversation could actually be a sign of unresolved emotional baggage. This individual's thumbscrew might be their need for validation or closure in that area of their life. By offering empathy, support, or simply asking questions that encourage them to talk more, you can create a bond and a level of trust that allows you to influence their decisions or actions when necessary. In contrast, someone who is constantly bragging about their accomplishments or abilities may be covering up their own insecurities. By acknowledging their achievements while subtly hinting at areas where they might fall short, you can manipulate their behavior by appealing to their need to prove themselves, making them more willing to follow your lead. The power of subtle manipulation. Once you've identified a person's weaknesses, the next step is using that knowledge strategically. This is where the art of subtle manipulation comes into play. Green emphasizes that power is not achieved through brute force but through the ability to control the flow of energy in any situation. With the right thumbscrew at your disposal, you can push the person toward the outcome you desire without them ever realizing what's happening. One of the most effective ways to use this knowledge is through the art of suggestion. Instead of directly telling someone what to do, you can guide them toward making the decision themselves. This is where psychological influence becomes incredibly powerful. By planting seeds of thought, encouraging certain behaviors, and reinforcing them through compliments or support, you create a situation where the person feels as though they are acting freely, when, in fact, you are steering them toward a specific conclusion. For example, if you know that someone is particularly motivated by recognition, you might subtly position yourself as someone who can offer that recognition. Rather than demanding their loyalty or attention outright, you create situations where they are compelled to seek your approval. Over time, they will begin to act in ways that align with your desires, all the while believing that they are doing so out of their own volition. Dealing with pushback. While Law 33 encourages discovering and leveraging others' weaknesses, Green also addresses the potential consequences of being too overt in your approach. People are not passive recipients of influence, they are constantly assessing their surroundings for threats and power plays. If you push too hard, too quickly, or too obviously, your actions may backfire. The person you are attempting to manipulate may sense your intentions and become defensive, leading to resentment or even outright rebellion. To avoid this, Green suggests that you always proceed with caution and subtlety. Never let your actions appear too calculated or manipulative. Instead, ensure that your moves are cloaked in such a way that they seem entirely natural and voluntary. By doing so, you prevent your target from recognizing the thumbscrew you are turning. Moreover, not everyone will have the same vulnerabilities or weaknesses. What works on one person may not work on another. Therefore, the application of Law 33 requires constant adaptability. Be prepared to adjust your approach based on the unique psychological makeup of each individual you encounter. The key is to remain fluid, to always observe and adapt, and to never underestimate the complexity of human behavior. Mastering the law. To truly master the law, it is essential to balance understanding with restraint. Knowing someone's thumbscrew gives you immense power, but power that is not tempered with wisdom can be disastrous. Using someone's vulnerabilities against them too frequently can lead to broken relationships, loss of trust, and even personal downfall. The greatest practitioners of this law understand when to apply pressure and when to ease off. They know that the ultimate goal of power is not to manipulate people for personal gain, but to shape outcomes in ways that serve the greater purpose. In this sense, Law 33 is not about exploiting others for the sake of cruelty but about using the knowledge of human nature to guide actions, protect your interests, and achieve your long-term objectives. Power, after all, is not about dominating others through sheer force. It is about mastering the invisible forces that govern human behavior, knowing when and how to apply them to influence the world around you. And in this world of constant change and complexity, knowing each person's thumbscrew is an invaluable skill, one that, when used wisely, can elevate you above the chaos and uncertainty of human relationships, giving you the clarity and control to succeed. Ultimately, discovering each person's thumbscrew is not just a tool for manipulation, but an opportunity for deeper understanding. The more you learn about others' motivations, fears, and desires, the more power you can wield, and the more you can influence the outcomes that matter most to you. But with great power comes great responsibility. The careful balancing of these forces, when done thoughtfully and strategically, will lead you to the mastery that Green speaks of, and to the success that comes from understanding the hidden psychology of those around you.